Good morning, everyone. I'll start with a bit of history. In the 18th century, Britain strived to rule the waves, but disastrous shipwrecks were frequent. In 1714, therefore, Parliament offered a reward of £20,000, several million in today's money, for a method whereby a ship's longitude could be accurately logged. The establishment view was that this would be done by astronomy. But John Harrison, a carpenter and clockmaker from Yorkshire, he eventually triumphed. His lifetime efforts culminated in a robust chronometer that kept time to better than 10 seconds on its first transatlantic voyage. And this wonderful instrument, the most astonishing high-tech artifact of its time, is now displayed in the Greenwich Observatory. In the 300 years since, there have been many challenge prizes. A prize to preserve food for Napoleon's army led to tinned food. A century later, another prize stimulated Lindbergh's transatlantic flights. More recently, there have been prizes for suborbital spaceflight, driverless cars, robotics, and so forth. Well, the Longitude Act is worth celebrating, and it's therefore welcome that the UK government has supported special challenge prizes to commemorate its tercentenary. And one link with the past is that as Astronomer Royal, I'm again involved. I chair the advisory committee that came up with a short list of 6 topics where we felt such prizes could make a difference. I have to say I'm an astronomer and not an astrologer. My crystal ball is very cloudy, but nonetheless I want this morning to speculate about some challenges that will confront us in the coming decades, which won't be met unless we can incentivize invention and innovation. I have a bit of a reputation, I fear, as a doomster, because 10 years ago I wrote a book which I entitled Our Final Century, ? And the publishers cut out the question mark, and the American publishers changed the title to Our Final Hour. They like instant gratification and the reverse. Well, I didn't think we'd wipe ourselves out, but I did think, and still do, that we'll have a bumpy ride through this century, for 3 reasons. First, humanity's ever heavier footprint threatens to stress our finite planet's ecology beyond sustainable limits. Second, technology is now developing so fast that the public is getting anxious that it could run out of control. And third, our interconnected world seems increasingly vulnerable. We depend on elaborate networks, electric power grids, air traffic control, international finance, just-in-time delivery, globally dispersed manufacturing, and so forth. Air travel can spread a pandemic worldwide within days, and social media, despite their huge benefits, can also spread panic and rumor literally at the speed of light. And the challenges these pose are real, but the response to them shouldn't be putting the brakes on technology. It should be accelerating and maybe redirecting invention and technology. Despite what I said, we can make one confident prediction about the rest of the century. The world will get more crowded. World population now exceeds 7 billion. By 2050, it's projected to be between 8.5 and 10 billion, the growth being mainly in Africa and India. Humans already appropriate around 40% of the world's biomass, and that fraction is growing. And the resultant ecological shock could irreversibly impoverish our biosphere. Extinction rates are rising. We're destroying the book of life before we've read it. And the great biologist E.O. Wilson has said that if we trigger massive extinctions, it'll be the action that future generations will least forgive us for. So high on the agenda will surely be how to produce more food, despite constraints on land and on water, with less waste and less environmental damage. The buzzword here is sustainable intensification with appropriate use of GM and other technologies. Another need of the world is going to be more energy, more clean energy. And current R&D doesn't match the urgency and scale of this problem. Energy research is meagre in scale compared to medical research. It shouldn't be. We need to explore all options of renewables, as well as fourth-generation nuclear fission, fusion, batteries and other energy storage mechanisms. Much of what's needed isn't big scale, it's small scale, well suited for challenge prizes. For instance, clean energy for lighting, appliances and smoke-free cooking in the developing world should be a priority. Another firm prediction is that the world in 2050 will be warmer. My pessimistic guess is that political efforts to decarbonize energy production won't gain much traction, and the CO2 concentrations in the atmosphere will rise at an accelerating rate throughout the next 20 years. But by then we'll know with far more confidence from advanced computer modelling, but also from having a longer time base for climate data, just what the climate sensitivity to CO2 actually is. And if climate change then seems on a trajectory fast rising into dangerous territory, there may then be pressure for panic measures, a plan B, some form of geoengineering. Because the greenhouse warming could be counteracted by, for instance, putting reflecting aerosols in the upper atmosphere or even vast sunshades in space. Geoengineering would be an utter political nightmare. It would have unintended consequences. Not all nations would want to adjust the thermostat the same way, but it's prudent to explore geoengineering techniques in order to clarify which options make sense and perhaps damp down undue optimism about a technical quick fix for our climate. What about technologies that may dominate our homes and everyday lives by 2050? Here it's harder to predict. There could be transformative surprises. After all, the smartphone and its ancillaries would have seen magic even 20 years ago. So we must keep our minds open, or at least ajar, to prospects that may now seem science fiction. Advancing medicine and public health are prolonging our lives. And some think that genetics can have even more dramatic effects on lifespans. And that's, of course, a real wild card in population projections. Still to be won, incidentally, is the Methuselah Mouse Challenge Prize for a genetically modified mouse that can live for 5 years. And there are quite hard-headed biologists who claim that some people already born will live to be 150. Biotech's advancing fast. The physicist Freeman Dyson foresees a time when children will be able to biohack and create new organisms, just as routinely his generation played with chemistry sets. Well, I guess this is comfortably beyond the science fiction fringe, because even more modest biotech advances will aggravate the threat of bioerror or bioterror. There have been recent concerns, for instance, about experiments to make influenza viruses more virulent and more transmissible. US governments just stopped funding such experiments. The risk is that the global village will have its village idiots, and they'll have global range. And coping with the tension between freedom, privacy and security will, I think, be a prime challenge because of the rising empowerment of tech-savvy groups, or even individuals, by biotech and, of course, by cybertech. Turning now to cybertech and machine intelligence. Even back in the 1990s, IBM's Deep Blue beat Kasparov, the world chess champion. More recently, IBM's Watson won a TV game show. Maybe a new generation hypercomputer may achieve oracular powers that offer a controller dominance over international finance and strategy, an extension of what quant funds already have. Advances in software and sensors, though, have been rather slower than advances in number crunching. Robots still can't match the facility of a child in recognizing and moving the pieces on a real chessboard. But technology is advancing apace, and if robots could interpret and observe their environment as adeptly as we do, they would truly be perceived as intelligent beings to which or to whom we can relate, as we do to other people. But will robots then remain docile rather than going rogue? If, for instance, a hypercomputer could infiltrate the internet and the Internet of Things, it could manipulate the rest of the world. It may have goals utterly orthogonal to human wishes, or even treat humans as an encumbrance. Some experts take this scenario seriously and think we should already be formulating a code of responsible innovation for AI. In regard to AI, just as in synthetic biology, we don't know where the boundary lies between what may happen and what will remain science fiction, nor how fast innovations will happen. At the extreme, there is Ray Kurzweil, a prophet of these things, now working at Google. He claims that we only have 30 years before the so-called singularity, when machines take over and humans can transcend biology by merging with them, maybe losing their individuality and evolving into some common consciousness. But I gather he's worried he may not live to see this. So he wants his body frozen until this nirvana is reached. But be that as it may, that may be science fiction, but it is likely that before 2100, our society and its economy will be transformed by autonomous robots, even though these may be idiot savants rather than displaying full human capabilities. And books like The Second Machine Age have addressed the economic and social disruptions that will ensure when robots replace not just factory workers, but white-collar workers as well. And here there's bad news for lawyers, because even they can be replaced by machines. One context where robots surely have a future is in space. We saw recently Rosetta's comet landing, which was on the basis of 1990s robotic technology. Rosetta was designed more than 15 years ago. Today, flotillas of cheap shoebox-sized satellites can observe every tree in the world every day. Later in the century, the whole solar system will be explored by miniaturized robots. And robotic fabricators may build vast lightweight structures floating in space. Solar energy collectors, for instance, perhaps mining raw materials from asteroids. And here, challenge prizes and private backers are making the running. These robotic advances will, I think, erode the practical case for human spaceflight. Nonetheless, I hope people will follow the robots. But the phrase space tourism should be avoided. It will always be risky, not routine. It'll be space adventure. But wealthy adventurers are already signing up for a week-long trip round the far side of the moon. I'm told they've sold a ticket for the second flight, but not the first flight, and maybe that says something. We should surely cheer on these private enterprise efforts in space, because they can tolerate higher risks than a Western government could impose on publicly funded civilians, and thereby they can cut costs. By 2100, groups of pioneers may have established bases independent from the Earth, on Mars or maybe on asteroids. And whatever ethical constraints we impose here on the ground, we should surely wish these adventurers good luck in using all the resources of genetic and cyborg technology to adapt themselves and their progeny to alien environments. This might be the first step towards divergence into a new species, the beginning of the post-human era within just a few centuries. But don't ever expect mass emigration from the Earth. Nowhere in our solar system offers an environment even as clement as the Antarctic or the top of Everest. It's a dangerous delusion to think that space offers an escape from the Earth's problems. We've got to solve them here. Spaceship Earth is hurtling through the void. Its passengers are anxious and fractious. Their life support system is vulnerable to disruption and breakdowns. But there's no one in charge, really. There's too little planning, too little horizon scanning, too little awareness of long-term risks. There's no scientific impediment to achieving a sustainable and secure world of 9 billion people, where all enjoy a lifestyle better than those of us in the West do today. And that's why the agenda of today's conference is so crucial. It's imperative to speed up innovation. And we can be technological optimists. But we need to foster a culture of responsible innovation, especially in fields like biotech, AI, and geoengineering. Because technology brings great hopes, but also great fears that we can't brush aside. We mustn't forget an important maxim: the unfamiliar is not the same as the improbable. And what engenders pessimism and creates a gap between potentialities and what actually happens is the short-term and parochial politics and sociology. Politicians look to their own voters and the next election. Stockholders expect a payoff in the short run. We tend to downplay what's happening even now in faraway countries. And we discount too heavily the problems we leave for future generations. Without a broader perspective, without realizing that we're all on this crowded world together, governments won't properly prioritize projects which are long-term in a political perspective, even if a mere instant in the history of our planet. H.G. Wells said that the next century will be a race between education and catastrophe. We need the education to ensure that there are enough innovators, but also to ensure that all citizens are mindful of these issues whenever they vote. And it is good news that polls tend to show that younger people are far more on message in these respects than their elders. And I give the final word to the great immunologist Peter Medawar. I quote, "The bells that toll for mankind are like the bells of alpine cattle. They are attached to our own necks, and it must be our fault if they don't make a tuneful and melodious sound." Thank you very much.